What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Handheld Hero. I'll be honest, I was not fully sold on IO Interactive's Bond game at first, but the more I've seen of First Light, the more it feels like this could end up being a lot more interesting than I originally thought, and the reason is pretty simple. This doesn't look like a Bond game that's just trying to survive off the name. It actually looks like IO is trying to do something with it. Not full Hitman, not full Uncharted, but somewhere in that space where you've got spy fantasy, player freedom, slick presentation, and a Bond who still feels a little raw. And honestly, that's exactly why this game has my attention right now. A big part of that comes down to the team behind it. First Light is set to launch on May 27th, 2026, and once you remember this is being made by IO Interactive, the whole thing starts to make a lot more sense. Because when you hear IO, you don't think mindless action. You think stealth, you think systems, you think finding your own angle inside a mission. That's why this game stands out to me. Because if this had been announced by some random studio, I think I'd be way more skeptical. But with IO, there's at least a real reason to believe this game might actually let you play like a spy, instead of just pretending to be one in cutscenes. And the setup helps too. This is an origin story, so instead of dropping you in as the polished, fully formed version of James Bond, the game is building around a younger Bond who's still earning that 00 status inside MI6. And honestly, I think that helps a lot, because it gives them room to make him feel a little less smooth, a little less untouchable, and a little more reckless. That actually makes the whole thing feel more human. And if they do that right, it gives the game a way better arc than just throwing you into another Bond story where he already has everything figured out. That's also why the gameplay direction matters so much here. Because from everything they've shown so far, First Light doesn't look like straight-up Hitman, but it also doesn't look like a pure cinematic roller coaster either. It feels more like a hybrid, and honestly, that's probably the smartest thing they could have done. Because if they made this too much like Hitman, people would just say, okay, so this is Bond with disguises. But if they made it too much like Uncharted, then it starts losing the whole spy angle that should make this game different. What I'm seeing right now is something in the middle. You've still got stealth, you've still got social spaces, you've got blending in, listening in on conversations, and even bluffing your way through situations. But at the same time, the game also looks way more focused on momentum. It feels faster, more aggressive, more in motion, and that actually feels right for Bond. The gadgets are another big reason this is working for me, because if you're making a Bond game, the gadgets cannot just be decoration. They need to matter. And from what they're showing, you've got things like the multifunction watch, smoke tools, and tech that looks like it might actually change how you move through situations. That's what I want. I don't want a Bond game that's basically just a shooter with a tuxedo on top of it. I want a Bond game where the spy stuff actually matters. So the real question for me is balance. How much of this is actually going to feel like player freedom, and how much of it is going to be tightly scripted to keep the movie feel going? Because that's the line this game has to walk. If it leans too hard into scripted action, then it risks becoming just another polished licensed game. But if it really lets you think, improvise, use the gadgets well, and approach situations with some creativity, then yeah, this could end up being one of the more interesting action-adventure games of the year. And honestly, I think that's why this trailer worked for me. It didn't just make the game look expensive, it made it feel like it might actually have a point of view. So yeah, First Light definitely has my attention right now. Not just because it's Bond, because this actually looks like a game that might have a real identity behind it. And if IO can really land that balance between spy fantasy, player freedom, and cinematic momentum, then this could be a really strong surprise. Let me know what you think, and I'll catch you in the next one.